Hello everyone, welcome back to the One Code Tap channel. So today we're going to get started on a new series all about Django and what you'll need in order to get started on your web development journey. So this series is all going to be about the Python web framework, which is called Django, and we're going to get started on a lot of the basics. So we're going to be learning all about the admin, models, views, and basic templating, along with some other things that we could include, like being able to integrate React with Django, and also we're also going to touch upon the Django REST framework. So tune in, but first we need to know what Django is all about. So we're going to start with the introduction along with the installation of what we're going to learn for this series. But before we get into our Django journey, let's talk about what actually is Django. And let's try to define what we're actually going to be getting into. So Django is actually a high-level open source web framework written in Python, and this would encourage rapid development and clean and pragmatic design. So Django is essentially a library or kind of a branch that takes from Python. And if you don't know what Python is, I suggest that you learn that before this, because Django entirely relies on Python, and knowing what Python is definitely going to be a requirement to learn this framework. And this definitely encourages rapid development, as Python would encourage lesser code, or code that would be a lot more efficient, meaning less lines and less time to run said code. And this would lead to more clean and pragmatic design or code practices. So before we get into that, let's talk about what kind of architecture lies behind Django. So let's talk about MVC. So what does MVC actually stand for? So MVC actually is an acronym which would define these three elements that would create the architecture of something like Django. So it would be model, view, controller. So let's start with model. So the model would represent the data and the business logic of the application. So this would be like a link to your database, or what would handle all of the calculations that would happen inside of your web application. Some responsibilities that the model would handle are managing the data and updating or processing said data when need be, responding to requests for information and changing the state if it is needed, and notifying the view when there are changes in the data. So this is essentially your little database manager inside of your web app. And next we have the view. So the view presents the data to the user and manages the user interface. So whatever you want to show to your client or in the client side is where this view is going to be coming along. So the responsibilities for this view include displaying information to the user based on the data received from the model and sending user input to the controller. So this view is also going to be acting as a receptacle for your clients and for your clients to send out data to the server to be processed and to be handled. And it does not contain business logic, and this mainly focuses on the presentation to the client. All right, and lastly, we have the controller. So the controller handles user input, and it updates the model and manipulates the view. So essentially, there's the intermediary or the middleman that is going to be in between the model and the view, handling all of the functionalities that happen between both. So it's going to listen for user inputs from the view, and it's going to process user requests and update the model accordingly. And it will be the same way, vice versa. It's going to update the view to reflect the changes in the model as well. So this is basically your middleman and your web application. And before we get into the architecture and how it's going to look like in our Django page, let's first focus on this page over here. So this is what we call Django startup page. And this is what we're going to be tackling for the rest of the episode. So for now, this is going to be our introduction. So I hope you're excited to get into this new series with me regarding Django. All right, so now let's try and work on installing Django. So the first thing we're going to need is, since Django is a Python framework, of course, we need to install Python on our systems. So if you haven't already installed Python, I suggest that you do so, as this is going to be a requirement in order to follow along with this Django tutorial series. So in my case, I already have it installed. So we're going to move on to the next requirement, which is going to be Visual Studio Code. So Visual Studio Code works with any operating system. In my case, it's already installed on my Windows operating system. In your case, maybe you need to install it. So just go to the official website, which is also linked down in the description, and install it accordingly. And the last thing we need is actually installing Django itself. So in order to do this, we actually need a thing here, which is called pip install Django 5.0. So we actually need this pip, which is pretty much already part of the Python installation. So we don't need to worry about that right now if you already have Python installed. So the next thing we're going to do is actually make sure that we have Python installed, so we could actually get our Django project running. So the program that I'm going to be using for Windows is called Windows PowerShell. So in order to do this, we're going to be going to a folder that I created in my desktop, which is called Django tutorial. So you can see it over here. All right, so I'm going to try and go to this folder inside my PowerShell. So what I'm going to do is click on this address bar over here. There you go. And let's copy that and type in cd and then copy whatever we pasted in. There you go. So now that we have that, we're going to be installing the necessary things. But before that, let's actually check if we have Python installed. So we could say python -- version to check out our Python version. So we could see my Python version is 3.12.0. It's a little behind, but it's going to be more than enough for our purposes. In this case, being installing and getting our Django project running. So the next thing we're going to do is check out if it is actually installed. So we could say python -m. -m would refer to getting a module from Python. And we're going to say pip and -v to check out the version of pip that we have. So we could see that my pip test installed is 23.3.1. And that's definitely going to be more than enough for our purposes in installing Django. So the next thing we're going to do is actually start installing with pip. But we're not going to be installing Django first. We're going to be installing something that's going to make our install a lot cleaner. And that's going to be creating a virtual environment. So in this case, I also made use of the -m, since this is also calling a module within Python. And we see this term, which is called venv. So venv is just a short term for virtual environment. And this is going to make our installing a lot cleaner, as this is going to be a clean slate for Python. So any other modules that we installed with Python before is not going to be showing up in this instance. So think of this as like a very clean way to declare all the packages that we installed for this project. And this is going to be definitely helpful when we're going to be pushing it to an online repository. And we don't need to bloat other people's systems when they're going to be downloading or contributing to our project as well. So let's hit enter on that. And we're going to see a new folder appear in our Django tutorial, which is called venv. So our venv is actually not activated yet. So let's try and hit on activate to do so. So we're going to type in venv /scripts/activate. So this is going to be running either a batch command or a command that's going to refer to your operating system to enable our venv. All right, so we're going to be making use of pip freeze. And we can see that we currently have nothing installed. And that's fine because we're going to be installing Django only for this project. So let's actually try and use that right now. So we could say pip install Django. And now we're going to wait for it to collect all of the libraries in order to install what we need for Django. And now we actually have everything that we need. And let's try doing pip freeze right now to see what we have in this virtual environment. And we could see that these are the four packages that we need to run Django successfully. And now that we have all of this ready, we are actually done with our installation. So we could take a look at our page right now. All right, so let's try and get that page up and running. So what I'm going to do is access a Django admin command in order to start our project, since, of course, if we're going to display a page from Django, we need to have a project underneath that. So let's put in here start project, and I'm going to name my first project for this series. And I want to install this project in the same folder, so I'm just going to put that. This is going to make it so that it's going to put everything that we need in this one folder, so it's not going to put it in a folder that's inside this. So everything is just going to be in the folder I'm in right now. So let's hit on enter, and now I could see that we have this manage.py and my first project folders in here. And we could see that this also has some Python files as well. But this isn't really the best way to look at these files and its contents. So let's try and actually move to a code editor and see what's happening under the hood. So you can do code dot, and that's going to be a shortcut in order to open this current folder inside of Visual Studio Code. So let's hit on enter for that. And it's going to open this in here. And now we could see all these files in here. And these are looking good. So we don't have to worry about what's in here right now. These just come with the project starting of Django. So we're going to take a look more in depth with these later on in the series. But for now, all we need to worry about is trying to run that very first page, or the default page that comes with starting a project in Django. So in order to do that, we're going to, once again, turn on this venv. So it did turn on this time, but no worries. We could just do it ourselves here. There you go. Now it's open. And now we're going to make use of a command. So we're going to say py manage.py, and there's going to be a cycle of commands every time we're going to make changes to our Django project. So we could say pymesh.py make migrations. So this first one is going to check out if we made any changes to the model, and I'm going to explain how we're going to make those later on. But for now, let's just follow along and see what this command does. So we're going to see no changes detected. So that's good because we didn't edit anything yet. So it's not going to detect any changes. But for now, let's try pretend that we actually made those changes. And after those changes have been made and they've been saved into our Django project, we're going to migrate to activate those changes. And we could see all of these are going to appear. So what are all of these? So we could take a look at content types, auth, and admin. So these are model names, and don't worry if you think that you didn't make those. Those just come with the default project creation. So the default project already comes with content types, authentication, and admin responsibilities. So these are all things you don't have to worry about later on because Django already made it for us. So after that, now we can make use of pymesh.py run server. And this is going to let us open this in our browser. So we could say that. All right. So let's see if I'm going to open this in my browser. And now that I opened it in my browser, we could see that I was able to open the page that we saw a while ago. So that's going to be it for the first episode. In the next episode, we're going to take a look more in depth as to how these pages work, and we're going to try and make one ourselves. So thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in our next video for this series. Thank you for watching.